Mara Ashveil had learned, very early in her life, that silence was the safest language she knew. She had grown up in Silverbrook, a small, fog-covered village, sitting at the edge of wolf territory, where the pine trees were so tall they blocked the afternoon sun, and the air always smelled like earth and cold rain. It was a quiet place, a proud place, but for Mara, it had never felt like home. Not really. She was 22 years old, the third daughter of a beta male who had long since run out of luck. Her father, Aldric Ashveil, was not a cruel man, but he was a weak one, and sometimes that is worse. He had borrowed power from the wrong alpha many years ago, made promises he could not keep, and spent the years since then shrinking himself smaller and smaller, hoping no one would come to collect. Someone finally came. His name was Gregor Voss. He was 61 years old, the ruling alpha of the Eastern Pack, and he had been widowed twice. He was not looking for love. He was looking for a young woman from a family that had no choice but to say yes. He had chosen Mara. Mara did not find out from her father. She found out from her younger sister Livia, who had pressed her ear to the wall the night the two men shook hands in the front room. Livia came to Mara's bedroom with red eyes and shaking hands, and she whispered the news like it was something dirty that needed to be kept quiet. 3 days, Livia said. The ceremony is in 3 days. Mara sat on the edge of her bed for a long time after that. She did not cry. She had already spent too many years crying over things she could not change, and she was tired of it. Instead, she thought carefully, the way she always did when the world pressed in on her from all sides. She went to her mother first. Celine Ashveil was a soft woman, gentle, in the way that certain people become gentle after years of giving in. She sat at the kitchen table when Mara came to her, already crying before Mara said a single word, which told Mara everything she needed to know. Her mother had already known, and she had said nothing. "There is nothing I can do," her mother said quietly. "Pack law binds us. Your father has agreed. Gregor Voss is within his rights." Mara stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she turned and walked out. She tried to leave on the first night. She packed a small bag, a change of clothes, a little money she had saved, a photograph of Livia she kept tucked inside an old book. She made it as far as the front gate, before she saw the two men standing at the edge of the road, big and still as trees, watching the house. Gregor Voss had already sent his enforcers. She was already being guarded, even though no papers had been signed yet. She went back inside. She put the bag under her bed. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. On the second day, she visited the village elder, an old woman named Bira, who lived in a stone house near the eastern well. Bira was the only one in Silverbrook who knew the old pack laws by memory, every line and every exception. Mara sat across from her and asked her directly if there was any way out. Bira was quiet for a long time. She was the kind of woman who took every question seriously, which was one of the few things Mara had always respected about her. "There is one way," Bira said at last. "If an unclaimed Omega has already been scented by another, a higher-ranking male, she cannot be bound to another in ceremony. The bond would be considered compromised." "Is there anyone in Silverbrook who would do that?" Mara asked. "Who would stand against Gregor Voss?" Bira looked at her with something close to sadness. "No," she said simply, "there is not." Mara thanked her and left. That evening, she did something she had never done before. She walked to the edge of the thornwood. Every person in Silverbrook knew the rule about the thornwood. You did not go near it, and you certainly did not cross into it. It was not pack territory. It had never been pack territory. Whatever lived in that forest was older and larger than the pack system, and it had made clear, many generations ago, that it wished to be left alone. Mara did not plan to go inside. She just wanted to sit somewhere that did not feel like a cage. She found a large flat rock at the very edge of the tree line and sat down on it, watching the darkness between the trunks. She sat there for almost an hour. And then she smelled something. It was not the smell of a wolf, that familiar mix of forest and animal. This was something different entirely, something that felt ancient, the way a mountain feels ancient, or the way deep river water does. It was iron and cedar and cold winter air, and it was unlike anything she had encountered before in her life. She looked into the trees. She saw nothing. But she felt, with a certainty she could not explain, that something in the dark was looking back at her. She should have been afraid. Looking back on it later, she could never quite explain why she was not. She simply sat there for another few minutes, breathing in that strange, heavy scent, and then she stood up, picked up her shoes, and walked home. She told herself it was nothing. By morning, the third morning, the last morning, she had almost believed it. The ceremony was held at the stone circle in the center of Silverbrook. It was an overcast day, the sky pressing down gray and close. Mara was dressed by 4 pack women who spoke only to each other and never once asked her how she was feeling. Her hair was pinned and braided. Her wrists were wrapped in ceremonial silver thread, which was tradition, a symbol of the bond that was about to be made official. She walked to the stone circle with her father at her side. He held her arm the way a man holds something he is ashamed of but cannot put down. He did not look at her face. She did not look at his. Gregor Voss was already waiting. He was exactly as she had imagined him, broad, heavy, with small eyes, and a smile that did not quite reach them. He looked at her the way a man looks at something he has purchased, checking that it arrived in acceptable condition. The elder raised the binding cord. And then the thornwood went completely silent. It happened all at once, like a sound had been swallowed. Every bird stopped. Every small movement in the distant trees ceased. The air changed in a way that was difficult to describe. It became heavier, and colder, and full. Every wolf in the stone circle felt it before they saw it. Ears went back. Eyes went wide. Several people took steps backward without understanding why. 2 of Gregor's enforcers dropped to one knee, and from the look on their faces, they had not chosen to do it. Their bodies had simply moved on their own, responding to something their instincts recognized as far beyond them. He stepped out of the trees. He was tall, taller than any man in Silverbrook, with dark silver-black hair and eyes that were a pale, clear gray, almost white, like a winter sky just before it snows. He wore simple dark clothing and no pack markings, no colors, nothing that signaled rank or territory in the way Mara had been taught to read. And yet rank came off him like heat off stone in summer. It was not something he was performing. It was simply something he was. He walked across the open ground slowly, without hurry, as if time itself was comfortable waiting for him. His name was Caelan Dravith. He was the Lycan king. Mara had heard the word Lycan, the way children hear about storms in other countries, as something real, but distant, and not quite connected to her daily life. Lycans were not wolves. They were older than wolves. Their bloodline predated the pack system by so many generations that most modern packs had forgotten the original agreements that had kept the 2 kinds separate and respectful of each other. He stopped at the edge of the stone circle. He did not look at Gregor. He did not look at the elder, or the pack women, or Mara's father. He looked at Mara. He held her gaze for a moment, and then he said, quietly, in a voice meant only for her, "You came to the edge of my forest last night. You sat at the tree line, and you breathed the air, and you did not run." Mara said nothing. "Under the old law," he continued, still quietly, "a female who enters Lycan-scented space and remains, who does not flee, is initiating a claim. It is not a trick, and it is not a trap. It is simply the oldest law there is. You made a choice last night, even if you did not know you were making it." Gregor Voss moved then, stepping forward with his chest out, the way alphas move when they want to remind everyone in the room that they are the largest thing present. "This ceremony is legally binding under pack law," he said. His voice was steady, but it cost him effort to keep it that way. "You have no authority here." Caelan turned to look at him. He did not raise his voice. He did not move aggressively. He simply looked at Gregor, the way a person looks at a small fire, aware of it, unafraid of it, mildly interested in whether it would do something. "Lycan law is older than pack law," Caelan said. "It does not require your recognition to be valid." "She had no idea she was near your territory," Gregor said, his voice getting louder now. "She did not choose anything. She was sitting on a rock." "She stayed," Caelan said. "That was the choice." Gregor turned to the elder, demanding she proceed with the ceremony. The elder's hands were trembling visibly. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She was a woman who had spent 40 years being certain of her knowledge of the law, and now she was standing at the edge of something that was much older than anything she had ever studied, and she was very clearly unsure. "I cannot override a Lycan claim," she said finally, in a voice barely above a whisper. "The law does not give me that authority." Gregor's face went red. He turned back toward Mara and reached for her wrist, the one still wrapped in the silver ceremonial thread, and in the space between one breath and the next, Kalen was standing between them. No one had seen him move. He was simply there, the way a wall is simply there, solid, immediate, and not going anywhere. He did not touch Gregor. He did not need to. "Try that again," Kalen said, "and we will have a very different conversation." Gregor held his ground for exactly 3 seconds. Then he stepped back. The stone circle was perfectly silent. Kalen turned to face Mara fully. He took one step back, giving her space, and his expression shifted. The controlled authority loosened just slightly, and underneath it was something more careful, more honest. "I want to be clear with you," he said. "The claim exists, but it is not a chain. If you tell me right now that you do not want this, that you want me to leave and dissolve the claim, I will do it. You will be unprotected, and we both know what that means for you here, but the choice is still yours. It has always been yours." He waited. Mara looked around the stone circle slowly. She looked at her father, who was staring at the ground, his hands pressed together in front of him. She looked at her mother, who had come to watch, and was now crying silently into a folded cloth. She looked at Gregor Voss, who was staring at her with the particular fury of a man who had never before been told no. She looked at the 4 women who had dressed her that morning, all of them watching with wide, cautious eyes. Not one of them, not a single one, had ever looked at her like she was a full person. She looked at Kalen last. He was watching her with those clear, pale eyes, and he was doing something she had not experienced very often in her life. He was waiting for her answer, not her compliance, not her agreement, her actual answer. Mara reached down and unwound the silver ceremonial thread from her wrists. She folded it carefully and set it on the stone ledge beside her. Then she picked up the small bag she had hidden beneath the decorative cloth at the base of the altar stone, the bag she had packed 2 days ago, the one with the change of clothes and the little money and the photograph of Livia, because she had carried it to the ceremony herself, tucked under the cloth, just in case. She walked across the stone circle and stood beside Kalen. No one spoke. No one moved. Kalen looked at her once, a brief, quiet look, and then he turned and walked back toward the thornwood. Mara walked beside him. She did not look back at Silverbrook. She had spent 22 years looking back at a life that was happening around her instead of to her, and she was done with it. They walked through the trees in silence for a long time. The forest was dense and dark, and smelled exactly the way it had the night before, iron and cedar and cold, clean air. And Mara found, to her surprise, that she was not afraid. She was many things. She was uncertain, and she was tired, and she was quietly overwhelmed by the size of what she had just done, but she was not afraid. When they reached the far edge of the thornwood, where the trees opened up into a wide, quiet valley she had never seen before, Kalen stopped walking. He turned to face her in the pale afternoon light. "You can ask me whatever you want," he said. "I will answer honestly. That is the only promise I can make you right now, but I will keep it." Mara stood in her white ceremony dress at the edge of a valley she did not know, holding a small bag and a future she had not planned, breathing air that smelled like somewhere she might, eventually, belong. She looked at him. "Tell me everything," she said. And for the first time in 22 years, someone actually did.